Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that within your chest there is a sacred temple, a space where no words have ever been spoken, where only silence knows the way. It is there, in this intimate territory, that the universe hears you most clearly. Perhaps you are going through a moment where everything seems too noisy. Opinions, judgments, expectations. Maybe you are trying to manifest something precious, but you feel that life does not respond with the same intensity as your intention. And then comes the silent question, almost whispered by your heart. Am I talking too much? Showing too much? Sharing too much? There is a power that is born in silence, a frequency that only vibrates when it is not being observed. And that is what we are going to talk about today. This is not another video with empty promises or magic formulas. It is a spiritual journey, a dive into the most subtle layers of your consciousness, where science and the soul meet, where quantum physics dances with the ancient secrets of spiritual wisdom, where the discoveries of neuroscience align with the teachings of masters such as Alan Watts, Joe Dispenza, and Florence Scovel Shinn to reveal something that is beyond what the eyes can see, the power of not telling. Yes, the power of keeping to yourself, of protecting what is being born within you, like someone protecting a flame in the wind. Because there is a truth that few have the courage to acknowledge. When we share our dreams before their time, something is lost, energy escapes, a force dissipates. Carl Jung said that what is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. And part of this bringing to consciousness is knowing the right moment to keep quiet, to cultivate in the invisible, because the invisible is the womb of creation. In this video, we will explore the roots of this phenomenon. We will understand why excessive exposure drains your vibrational field, how keeping a secret can be an energetic medicine, why the act of sharing, which we have learned is synonymous with connection, sometimes cuts the thread of manifestation. And finally, you will learn a silent ritual, a deep breathing technique to reroute your energy and get back on track without relying on words or external validation. You are not alone. The universe hears you, even in silence, especially in silence. So take a deep breath and come with me. Imagine a newly planted seed. It rests under the dark earth, invisible to the world. No ray of sunlight touches it directly. No one sees it. And yet, it grows. It feeds on the silence of the soil. It trusts in time. It understands that being seen before its time would be the same as being torn away from the possibility of blossoming. Now think about yourself, your deepest desires, the dreams you whisper to yourself before you fall asleep, the plans that have not yet taken shape but already live in the womb of your heart. What happens when you expose them prematurely? Science already offers us clues. According to behavioral neuroscience, especially studies on anticipatory dopamine, when we share our goals with others, the brain releases dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter, as if the goal had already been partially achieved. This creates a chemical illusion of achievement, reducing the real motivation to carry out what was said. It is as if the brain were saying, "We have already been seen. We have already received recognition. We can rest." But the price of this is high, because while the ego is satisfied with imaginary applause, the energy field weakens. And in quantum language, where focus and emotional coherence are the keys to manifestation, this dispersion of energy is lethal. Alan Watts reminds us that reality is not something that is conquered, but something that is allowed. And allowing requires trust. And trust often requires silence. By telling too much, you invite the doubt of others into your inner home. Unconsciously, you begin to absorb the frequencies of judgment, fear, skepticism. Even if no one says anything negative, the simple act of exposing yourself opens cracks. And as Florence Scovel Shinn teaches us, a word out of time can kill a miracle. There is also a more subtle but no less powerful spiritual component. According to ancient teachings, from the Vedas to Hermetic wisdom, everything that is created goes through three phases: conception, gestation, and birth. Exposing it before its time is premature birth. And like all premature life, it runs the risk of not surviving. But why do we feel such a need to tell? Maybe because of insecurity. Maybe because of a lack of validation. Maybe because we have not yet learned to fully trust what we feel. Sharing a plan is like lifting the veil of the invisible before the soul is ready. It is trusting the eyes of the other more than your own intuition. And this, as Neville Goddard would teach, cuts the link between what you imagine and what you experience. Epigenetics also reinforces this view. Bruce Lipton explains that our beliefs and perceptions literally shape genetic expression. By sharing your dreams with someone who vibrates at a different frequency, someone dominated by fear, sarcasm, or limited logic, you run the risk of absorbing a dissonant energy field, and this affects your body, your cells, your biology. So what should you do? Cultivate sacred silence. Learn from nature. Trust that the invisible works in your favor when you don't try to control the harvest time. As Moji said, silence is the language of God. Everything else is a bad translation. Protecting your dreams is protecting your frequency. It's taking care of your energy like someone taking care of an altar. It's knowing that not everything needs to be explained, that there are greater forces operating beyond logic, and that the universe, yes, listens, even when you are silent. And perhaps, especially when you are silent, there is something deeply mysterious about the act of keeping a secret. A silent warmth that pulses in your chest, as if a lit candle were kept away from the wind. A true secret, not one that oppresses or shawns, but one that protects what is still germinating, has the power to generate internal coherence. A sacred alliance between the soul and the body, between what is dreamed and what is being woven in the invisible. But why does this happen? The answer lies in the intersection of neuroscience and spirituality. From a neurological point of view, keeping a secret that resonates with our truth activates areas of the brain linked to emotional self-regulation, such as the prefrontal cortex, and strengthens the connection with the limbic system responsible for deep emotions. When we keep something that is only ours and that has value to us, the brain interprets this act as a vote of confidence in itself, and it responds by activating circuits of safety, self-control, and integrity. This neurochemical mechanism, according to recent neuropsychological studies, reinforces the release of internal oxytocin, even without the involvement of other people. Oxytocin, normally associated with interpersonal connection, is also produced when we get in touch with our essence. In other words, by keeping something secret, if that secret is aligned with our purpose, we activate bonds of inner trust. We create a more cohesive, more protected, cleaner vibrational field. Now, look at this from the perspective of quantum physics and vibrational consciousness. Greg Braden teaches that there is an intelligent field that connects everything in the universe, the quantum field, and that this field responds not only to what we think, but to the coherence between what we think, feel, and do. When we expose a desire or plan that is still fragile, without there being coherence between these three layers, we create dissonance. But by keeping the secret, we are practicing a higher form of congruence, thought, feeling, and intention aligned in silence. This raises our frequency, and when the frequency rises, our reality begins to resonate with what we carry in secret. Carl Jung said that loneliness does not come from not having people around, but from not being able to share what is meaningful to you. But there is a paradox here. Sometimes the most significant things need to be kept hidden not because of a lack of trust in others, but out of respect for the power of the invisible. This is what Taoist wisdom calls the power of non-action, Wu Wei. It is not passivity, it is trust. It is knowing that by keeping something inside, we are feeding a living spark that is still taking shape. Like a painter who does not reveal his canvas until every stroke is in place. Like a mother who does not announce her pregnancy until she feels the baby kick for the first time. Manly P. Hall reminds us that the true spiritual magician works in the invisible. He does not display his processes, does not anticipate his achievements, because he knows that manifestation is born of frequency, and frequency is born of intimacy with what is sacred. And the sacred does not shout, the sacred whispers. Keeping a secret, therefore, is more than a psychological act. It is a spiritual practice. It is like building an energy field around your desire, a vibrational shield that repels doubts, opinions, and misaligned energies. Because not everyone has the capacity to understand what is still being gestated within you. And what's more, by keeping a secret consciously, you create a kind of inner sanctuary, a vibrational space where visualization intensifies, where mental images gain strength, where creative imagination, as Neville Goddard taught, finds fertile ground to transform the invisible into form. There is power in the unsaid. There is energy that moves in silence. And curiously, it is in this silence that you begin to hear something greater, intuition, the voice of the higher self, the wisdom that comes from within and from above at the same time. Because when the noise of the world ceases, the soul speaks, and the universe listens. So, perhaps the question we should ask ourselves is not, who am I going to share this with? But rather, is it mature enough to be shared? Or even, what it means to be strengthened before the world sees what I am creating? Maybe the secret is not to hide, but to protect, to care, to respect the time of the flower before it blooms. What if what you keep with love is exactly what the universe needs to hear in silence? We live in a culture that glorifies exposure. Sharing has become almost an obligation. Social networks have turned intimacy into a showcase. Emotions are posted, dreams are announced, achievements are narrated in real time. And silently, we have been taught to believe that sharing is the most direct path to connection. But what if this belief is distorted? What if, at certain stages of the journey, sharing that which is sacred is not connection, but dilution? What if true strength lies in preserving that which is still forming? Spiritual wisdom has warned us about this for millennia. The teachings of the Tao say, those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. Not in the sense of repression, but of reverence. There are times when speaking is like opening a flower before its time. You expose the still closed bud to the harsh sun of other people's opinions, and it withers before it can bloom. From a neuropsychological standpoint, the search for connection through constant exposure activates brain reward mechanisms, especially dopamine and serotonin, that addict the system to external recognition. According to studies from Harvard University, talking about yourself activates the same pleasure centers as sex or food. But there is a side effect. The attachment to validation weakens the center of internal will. The higher self gives way to the social self. And this shift from the internal to the external cuts off the vibrational coherence necessary for manifestation. As Joe Dispenza explains, it is only when we are internally aligned, free from the need for approval, that our electromagnetic field expands with creative power. The heart and the brain become coherent, and the quantum field responds. But when we divide before it's time, we don't connect. We concede. We open doors to noise. We infiltrate doubts. Even if the other person listens to us with love, the simple act of opening the vibrational space of intention to another mind can affect the energetic pulse of what is being born within us. It's like a song that hasn't been finished yet, but is already being played in public. Every opinion, every look, every comment becomes an interference in the soul's score, and the original, pure sound begins to be lost. Alan Watts said that the ego is an illusion, a character we create to protect ourselves, but that distances us from our essence. When we seek connection through exposure, We often feed this character. We show what others want to see. We hide what is still fragile, and we end up more disconnected than ever. There is a subtle but essential difference between sharing and overflowing. Sharing is when you give something expecting something in return. Recognition, acceptance, validation. Overflowing is when you are so full of truth that it simply expresses itself, without the intention of convincing or pleasing. And overflowing only happens when there is time, vibrational maturity, and inner silence. The problem is that we have been taught to confuse exposure with intimacy. We believe that we are only seen when we show everything. But true connection is not born from what is revealed. It is born from what is felt, from silent presence, from unspoken vibration. Neville Goddard taught us that imagination is the channel of creation. But imagination needs focus, and focus requires restraint. It requires the spiritual gesture of protecting, of caring, of letting the energy circulate first inside so that it can then manifest outside with clarity. When we divide before its time, we fragment this energy. We allow the world to enter the womb of creation, and that weakens. It is not about living in isolation, but about knowing how to choose the moments, the spaces, and the people. To understand that true connection is not built on stage, but behind the scenes of the soul, and that there are times when solitude is the only way to preserve wholeness. Ask yourself, what am I seeking by sharing this now? If the answer is fear, need, or a desire for control, perhaps it is time to go back inside, to be silent, to trust. Because what vibrates in silence has more power than 1,000 words spoken in a hurry. What if, instead of telling ... you started to cultivate? What if the deepest connection is precisely the one that is born when you remain whole, even when no one is watching? Close your eyes, breathe in deeply, count to 4, hold, feel time suspended in the center of your chest. Now release ... gently, ... and imagine that, with this exhalation, you return to the universe all the weight that does not belong to you. This is the entrance to a temple that lives within you. Throughout our lives, we learn to react, to explain ourselves, to justify what we feel, what we want, what we dream. But there is a place within us that does not need to be defended. A space where the truth simply is. And to access this place, we do not need words, only presence. This is where the silent ritual of 21 breaths is born. A subtle, but profoundly transformative practice that reconnects us with our inner axis, recovers our original frequency, and anchors us in the vibration of silent manifestation. Neuroscience has already recognized the power of conscious breathing. Breathing slowly and rhythmically activates the vagus nerve, responsible for calming the nervous system, reducing cortisol, and promoting a state of biological safety. According to Dr. Joe Dispenza, this state of balance is the entry point to the quantum field, where thoughts and emotions align to co-create reality. But this technique goes beyond physiology. It is a vibrational ritual, a portal for reconnecting with the subtle field of creative consciousness. Hear us how it works. 1. Prepare the space, find a place where you can be alone. It doesn't have to be a sacred place, but it should be respected as such. It could be a corner of your room, a bench in the park, or even the inside of your parked car. The essential thing is external silence and internal invitation. 2. Assume the posture of the inner temple sit, with your spine straight, but without stiffness. Close your eyes. Rest your hands on your chest as if holding something precious. And mentally say, I am here, present, whole. 3. Begin the cycle of 21 breaths. With each breath, count mentally. But don't just count. Feel. Feel the air entering not only your lungs, but your soul. With each inhalation, you are saying yes to your presence. With each exhalation, you are releasing what is preventing your blossoming. Breaths 1 to 7. Purification, In these first 7 breaths, direct your attention to releasing tension. Imagine that with each exhalation, you dissolve noises, other people's opinions, inherited fears, like leaves being carried by the wind. Breathes 8 to 14. Reconnection now. Imagine that the air that enters brings light, a soft, golden light that envelops your heart. This is the frequency of your essence, of your original field. Breathe with the intention of remembering who you are, without the masks, without the pressures, without the noise. Breathes 15 to 21. Silent manifestation in this last phase. Visualize. See without effort, without forcing images, what is being born within you. It could be a dream, an intention, a vibration. Feel as if it were already happening, but don't tell anyone. Only your heart, only the universe. And at the end of the 21st breath, keep your eyes closed for a few seconds and repeat mentally, I am ready to grow in silence. The invisible works in my favor. This practice is not just a breathing technique. It is a vibrational choice. It is the decision to trust what you feel more than what you see. It is the courage to protect what matters, to take your time, to not show off, to be a seed. Because when we breathe consciously, we create space. And in that space, the universe whispers. Florence Scovel Shinn said that the soul knows the way, but it is in silence that it speaks. And that is why this ritual is powerful, because it is a vote of confidence in the soul, a pact with divine timing, a reminder that the invisible is not absence, it is preparation. You can repeat this ritual every day, in the morning, to anchor your energy before going out into the world, or at night, to clear the frequency of the day and align yourself again with your center. There are no rules, only presence. And perhaps you will realize over time that everything you try to explain begins to happen. Without noise, without effort, without needing to count. Life flourishes best when it is nourished in silence. Close your eyes once more and imagine a seed. Small, seemingly fragile. It is there, resting under the dark earth. It does not move. It does not make a sound. It does not cry out for attention. It does not explain itself. And yet, within it, the miracle has already begun. The seed does not fear the dark. It recognizes it as shelter, as preparation, as the sacred womb where something new will be gestated. Because nature, that great silent teacher, knows that all creation begins in the shadows, in the invisible, in seclusion. This metaphor of the seed is more than a poetic image. It is a spiritual key, a reminder that you, like it, carry a code of life that can only flourish at the right time and in the necessary silence. We often confuse growth with exposure. We believe that we are progressing only when we can show our steps to the world. But there is a growth that is invisible. And paradoxically, it is the most powerful of all. Manly P. Hall once wrote that the secrets of the soul are like the roots of a tree. The deeper they go, the stronger will be the growth above ground. The tree does not grow outward. It grows inward first. It grows in secret. And only when it is firmly anchored does it begin to rise, to blossom, to touch the sky. This is the spiritual journey of true manifestation. In the field of quantum physics, this process is mirrored in the concept of the implicated order, as proposed by David Bohm. According to him, there is a deeper, invisible reality where everything is connected and in constant movement. What we call manifest reality, what we can see and touch, is only the surface expression of a process that began much earlier in the invisible. The same is true with your dreams, intentions, and healings. Everything begins on the subtle plane, and this plane needs to be respected like a womb, dark, silent, lovingly protective. When you share something before its time, it is like opening the ground to see if the seed has sprouted. And in this gesture of impatience, you interrupt the miracle. The root is frightened. The sprout withdraws. the energy disperses. The seed teaches the time of trust. It teaches to surrender to the process. It teaches that the invisible is not absence, it is power. The dark is not emptiness, it is gestation. And silence is not solitude, it is alchemy. In the language of quantum spirituality, this means that your vibration needs to remain intact during the unmanifest phase. That your frequency needs to nourish the field before reality can respond. And this only happens when you protect your vibrational space with the reverence it deserves. Neville Goddard said that everything you desire already exists, but only in the corresponding vibrational state. In other words, you do not create from nothing, you tune in. And to tune in, you need to be in internal silence. You need to be fertile soil, not a stage. The metaphor of the seed reminds us of another subtle truth. No one sees what is happening underground. And yet, it is happening. The roots expand. The structure is formed. Life vibrates in the darkness. In the same way, the universe works for you, even when it seems like nothing is happening. And it is in this apparent, not happening, that the miracle is prepared. But for this, you need to trust in the invisible. You need to allow the womb of creation to do its work. You need to accept that not everything can or should be told. Silence is the language of the sacred, and the sacred does not need to prove itself. It simply is. The seed does not need to announce that it will bloom. It simply blooms, and so can you. Just remember that there is a time to plant, a time to be silent, and a time to bloom. And that the invisible, oh, the invisible, is the place where the universe kneels to gestate your reality. Maybe now, after this silent journey, you can realize that you are never alone. Everything that seemed like absence was care. Everything that seemed like waiting was preparation. And everything you kept secret was, in fact, sacred. We live in a world that pushes us outward, that teaches us to shout before we hear, to show before we feel, to run before we know where to go. But the soul has another rhythm, that of the seed, that of the womb, that of the universe that expands without haste. At this very moment, something in you is growing. Maybe you don't see it yet. Maybe you don't know how to name it, but you feel it. You feel it in your body, like a subtle breeze. You feel it in your chest, like a heat without origin. You feel it in your mind, like a thought that insists on returning, night after night. And maybe this something needs only one thing: silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is full presence. It is the space where your vibration can breathe, where your field can organize itself, where your intention can align with the creative consciousness. And that is why, in this video, you learn to protect. You learn to guard like someone guarding a jewel. You learn that secrets are fertile soil, and that the invisible is more real than any word spoken before its time. You discovered that telling too much weakens, that sharing what is not yet whole is like pouring water into a cracked vase, and that sometimes sharing is not connection, it is dispersion. But more than that, you have rediscovered the power of being with yourself, of breathing for yourself, of creating within before the world sees outside. The ritual of 21 breaths is not just an exercise. It is a reminder, a call, a return. Because true manifestation does not happen when you speak. It happens when you vibrate. And the purest vibration is born in silence. Bruce Lipton showed that our cells respond to intention. Greg Braden revealed that the quantum field responds to the coherence between heart and mind. Alan Watts taught that the ego wants control, but the soul only wants to dance with the mystery. So now, I ask you, what if the life you seek so much can only be born when you stop trying to explain and start simply feeling? What if your next big step is to do nothing, say nothing, show nothing, just be, deeply, silently, whole? Because silence, that space between one thought and another, may be all your soul needs to blossom. Take a deep breath. And remember, you are not broken. You are changing, and the universe listens to you always.